It was the spring of 1943. The war had already stretched across the world, from the deserts of Africa to the icy fields of Russia, but for the men of Bomber Command, the war was fought in the dark. Night after night, they climbed into their Lancasters, Wellingtons, and Halifaxes, knowing that for many of them, they would never see the dawn. Among them was Flight Lieutenant Arthur Bell, a 23-year-old pilot from Birmingham. He wasn't a hero. Not the kind you'd see on posters or in newspapers. He was quiet, polite, the kind of man who always smiled when he said, "Good evening." But every night, he led a 7-man crew into the heart of Nazi Germany, flying through storms, flak, and fighters, delivering destruction from the skies. The mission that changed everything came on May 16, 1943, the night of Operation Chastise. The world would remember it as the Dambusters Raid, a daring attempt to destroy Germany's great dams using revolutionary bouncing bombs. But for Arthur, it was something more personal. It was the night he truly understood what war demanded of men. That evening, the crew assembled at RAF Scampton. The air smelled of fuel, oil, and fear. The ground crew moved like ghosts, checking every rivet, every bomb fuse, every instrument. They knew what these young men didn't say, that many of these planes would never return. Arthur's navigator, Peter, was only 19. His wireless operator, Collins, carried a photograph of his fiancée in his flight jacket. They were boys asked to do a man's job in a war that seemed endless. At 9:30 p.m., the engines roared to life. For Rolls-Royce Merlins thundered against the night sky as the Lancaster lifted off the runway, heavy with fuel and the strange new weapon slung beneath it, the upkeep bomb, designed to skip across water like a stone. Their target was the Möhne Dam deep inside Germany. They flew low, dangerously low, sometimes no higher than a church steeple. The moonlit fields of France slid beneath them like silver ribbons. Flak bursts erupted in the distance. The wireless crackled with broken messages, code words, and the calm voices of men trying to hide their fear. Over enemy territory, every light on the plane was off. Every window blacked out. In that darkness, the crew spoke little. They didn't need to. As they approached the Ruhr Valley, the night exploded into fire. Searchlights swept across the sky, catching the gleam of wings, locking onto shadows. Arthur banked hard left, dropping to treetop level. The bomber shuddered under the strain. Bullets tore through the fuselage. The tail gunner shouted, "Fighters," but there was no turning back now. The dam loomed ahead, a black wall against the moonlight, silent and immense. At precisely 28 feet above the water, Arthur steadied the bomber. The bomb aimer called out the range, his voice trembling. Then, release. The upkeep bomb dropped, bounced across the water 3 times, and struck the dam squarely before sinking. A moment later, a column of water shot into the air, followed by a deep, thunderous crack. The Möhne Dam was breached. Arthur's crew erupted in cheers, but it was short-lived. Flak tore into the bomber on their escape route. One engine burst into flames. The Lancaster lost altitude, trailing smoke. Over the radio, they could hear the voices of other crews, calm one moment, screaming the next. One by one, call signs went silent. The darkness swallowed them whole. Arthur managed to keep the crippled bomber in the air, coaxing it back over the Rhine. The fuel gauges dropped fast. The crew spoke softly now, almost reverently, not about the mission, but about home. Peter talked about his mother's garden. Collins whispered the name of his fiancée. The tail gunner hummed a hymn. In the black sky above Europe, 7 young men faced eternity together. When dawn finally broke over England, only 11 of the 19 bombers had returned. Nearly half the men were gone. Arthur's crew landed just after sunrise, the Lancaster skidding to a stop, riddled with holes, one engine dead. They stepped out into the pale light, exhausted, silent, alive. Around them, ground crew counted empty dispersal bays. There were too many. Arthur never forgot that night. The newspapers called them heroes. Medals were awarded. Speeches were made. But for him, the memory of the dam's destruction, and the men who didn't come home, never left. He had seen courage, fear, and sacrifice in their purest forms. He had seen the cost of victory. Years later, when he was an old man, people would ask him what it felt like to be part of the Dambusters Raid. He would always pause, smile faintly, and say, "It was a beautiful night, and we were all so young." The war turned ordinary men into legends, but behind every legend was a story, of laughter, fear, friendship, and loss. For Arthur and his crew, the night over Germany was not about glory. It was about duty, survival, and the unbreakable bond of men who faced the darkness together. And when history remembers the Dambusters, it remembers not just the explosions or the shattered dams, but the faces of those who flew into the night, knowing they might never return, and did it anyway.